Right, let's do balance. I'm going to catch you up. We've already done an intro. We've already had a little chat. We've already had a chat about the fact we had a little chat before the intro, about the fact that I've got loads of energy. Jady's really tired. He wants to be asleep. His eyes should be closed. Ha ha ha! It's really funny. Wow.
It wasn't. It was actually that summary was much more entertaining than the actual chat. So we've done you a favour here.
Then the text stopped working. Then we talked about, I just got a call as we were started recording from Rob from Rat Race saying that no one, they're struggling to find people to marshal their Canterbury Tales event, which I then said I was really surprised by because to me, everyone's just desperate to get out there and do things. JD was like, what are you on about? No. People are like, man, COVID stuff still. I'm like, really? Is that difference between cities or not? JD then said, what did you then say, JD?
I said London. I mean, I'm amazed at how few people, like during the day in London. Like I've been up for meetings and, the Victoria, what's it called? I'm on the sort of the Brighton Main Line.
Yeah,
and, it is empty. Like it is empty. Like you normally feel that'd be filled with commuters, filled with builders, filled with everything. And it's just, I'm amazed how few people are doing stuff.
Well, that's just kind of, I think that's tourism daytime, but at night it is like a scene from Blade, I tell you.
Oh, I can imagine.
You go out.
I can imagine. No, yeah, but I think it's an older thing. I think people, even though like younger people aren't vaccinated and stuff like that, I think that's they've needed the going out for such a long time. I can understand why it's like that.
Because with this, I mean, Rat Race, God bless them, they've been selling tickets. They're probably selling tickets for like your grandchildren now, just so they can get the cash flow, so that whenever you have like
when they're born,
book a holiday to the moon in 50 years' time for £500,000.
Is that a test pilot? Literally a test pilot.
Yeah, a test pilot. And he's still going to be like, oh, will I get to go? Because they obviously have had all this pent-up aggression of people desperate to race, but maybe that's an issue we hadn't even considered, is that because so many people have all these weekends that are booked up with races, that suddenly there isn't the slush of people who are like, cool, I'll come and be a marshal. Or maybe people have saved up or rolled over enough races that people aren't needing to earn them.
I do think there is a general feeling of not really knowing. I think there's I don't know. It doesn't apply to.
I mean, I've had that feeling for years, to be honest, JD. I'm walking around.
I'm only basing this on perception because this doesn't affect us. We're going out and doing stuff like normal as though COVID hasn't happened and anything else. I just get a perception from other people that they're very cautious, and people just because going to all the places that we normally go to. Just numbers are really, really down. So that must mean that people are staying in, people are not doing stuff. I go into Brighton pretty much every day, and it's kind of getting back to where it was again because it's got a student population, but it's still it used to be the case that you go down at a certain time and you wouldn't be able to get a seat in a cafe or anything else like that. And it does feel, even with all the tourists coming, because there are still like tourism and stuff like that, it does feel very, very empty. So people must be still adhering to the don't go out message, or subconsciously not. Or everyone's been pinged.
Yeah.
And I mean, it's just the thing is, it's quite confusing. We were supposed to have Freedom Day, and what was the difference between the start of Freedom Day and not Freedom Day, apart from clubs? That was the thing. Like, no, I think the lack of confusion.
And the big question, because we haven't really, people are happy to help out others. I think in general, in principle, I think people are good, but we haven't really. And actually, I wasn't intending this to be a COVID heavy, so we'll wrap this up quickly if you're bored.
We haven't talked about COVID enough, I don't think.
Yeah. Probably barely knew it was happening, but we haven't. People haven't really considered that actually there's a huge difference between saying I'll get a jab, protect others, or I'll do something to protect others, And actually, there's a tolerance to how many times are you prepared to be quarantined for when you don't have
Yeah,
COVID. And that is where we're entering now, where are you, because the whole test and trace system works by people being pre-warned that they may have it, to be precautious about the fact that they may have it, and not everyone will, and most people won't have it, so that we can stop it spreading. But that then means that, and they haven't released the stats, but what do you think the stats are on the number of people pinged to the number of people who have it? Because if you're only a 1 in 10 chance of having it, that means you're going to be pinged, because we figured out with some loose maths the other day that between 1.5% and 3% of people who've got the app have been pinged in the first week, which is a huge number of people.
crazy.
So if, say, it's 1 in 10 of those have COVID, which I don't think it even can be, thinking the numbers, then are people prepared to quarantine 10 times when they don't have COVID? And the answer is going to be no, isn't it?
Well, the thing is,
And that's when it all falls down.
Well, even though that they said compliance with it has fallen, like it's like 10% or something like that, that only 10% of people who are getting pinged are actually acting upon it, because it's gonna it's got to a point now where I think the government realise that they just need to open up, because people are, even if they said, oh, if they turn around and said, oh, everyone's got to stay indoors for another 3 weeks, no one would do it. They know that. They know it's, they need to have that perception.
Unless it's for nightclub. Unless they need to open a 3-week nightclub and just say you're allowed to stay indoors, but it's going to be in the Wembley Arena and you're all clubbing.
I don't know. I can't remember
ayahuasca.
I can't remember whether we talked about this, but it's just the whole nightclub passport, vaccine passport thing. It's such it's a clear, crude apparatus that they've thrown at young people to go, basically, right, you're not getting vaccinated, but we've found this one thing that you really want to do, and we're saying that you need to be vaccinated. You don't need to be vaccinated.
Do you think you need the passport?
Vaccine passport for anything else? Just this one thing, which, firstly, I think is hilarious, because I reckon come September, no one's going to be using the COVID passports, because I think it's just a tool to get younger people to do it. But also, it assumes that all young people go, clubbing. And so all young people from the age of 16 to what's it called, 27, they all go clubbing all the time. And it literally, their lives are so miserable that the only thing that they look for, because of, whatever, they can't buy houses or whatever, is so miserable that they all go out at the weekends. And so what we're going to do, they're going to say to you, this one iota of hope and joy that you have is now going to be, gated behind a double vaccine. And I don't know, it just seems like that's the crass attempt to try and get people to vaccinate.
Do you think you need a passport for spin the bottle these days? Is that how they're getting into the early teen market? Like, no double vaccine, no. I mean, is spin the bottle still happening?
I was listening to a thing on Radio 4, and they were talking about putting your vaccine status on your online dating profile. And so that something.
The thing is, once you start putting up your health certificates on online dating, it begins at vaccines and it ends. You know where it ends, right? You know where it ends. I ain't got gonorrhea. That's where it's heading, right? If you've got your clean bill of the thing is,
I imagine your profile actually expressly said that as a major benefit.
If you know if you meet someone who knows that they don't have an STD, that to me implies that they've been shagging around enough that they've needed to be tested to then find out that they know that they don't have an STD.
That's true.
So it's a double-edged sword.
They've got a thing like 27 days since the last STI. Pretty good so far.
But so we were talking before about the fact you haven't really been watching the Olympics, and actually this morning it's been, and the last episode talking.
I've not. Hugo has. Hugo's been getting up in the morning, 7 o'clock, and watching all the replays of stuff, and he's been.
That's what you want, right?
Yeah, absolutely. It's exactly what you want. He's been watching, because I was thinking, he's just going to be interested in the football, but he's been watching everything. He's been watching.
What have been the surprises? What's he really taken?
I think there was a surprise in the sense that mountain biking was an Olympic sport. I think it didn't realise that was a thing. But what surprised
did you
me
see Van der Poel go over the top of the? They didn't show it in. You'd have the extended highlights to see him go over a massive rock and do a 360 flip. One of the best cyclists on earth. Amazing. I mean, not terrible. Wait. I can't remember if we're allowed to say that's amazing or not. Like, it's amazing. It's incredible to watch. He's fine. So it's
we're okay with mountain biking. Because mountain biking, there's an element of challenge to that.
There's a rawness to it.
There's a rawness to it. I think mountain biking is absolutely fine. It doesn't attract the same people as road cycling. Road cycling is the issue.
With the start of the mountain biking, they had these two different routes you could take on the up. It's pretty rocky, and some people got it wrong and were forced to run. So some of them were forced into running, which I liked. They get off and they run with the bike, and I think any sport that does that is pretty cool.
The only thing I've really watched in any detail has been the triathlon, and when I say it's been the triathlon, I mean it's really just the start of the triathlon because everyone said, "Did you see the start of the triathlon?" And then I watched it. Well, I love it. I love the fact that it feels like it's the kind of thing you'd expect to happen if Brighton ran an event. It's just someone's like, "Hey, I'm on my boat. Hey," like no one really noticing. This might be an issue, guys. This might be a problem.
You didn't hear it, but because they didn't pick it up. But the boat driver, when he pressed his horn, it went. He was a proper lad. But this morning, it's all because last time we spoke, we'd mentioned that we're going to watch the BBC series, which was really charting the history of success in British Olympics, back from Atlanta, where we only won one gold, which I think was it Redgrave in the rowing, and then it was kind of looking at how the approach and lottery funding, things like that, had made a massive difference on having a home Olympics on the medal table. But what I was expecting, and the conversation kind of continued today, actually, a lot of stuff's happening in the morning, but you'd read something that Marilyn Okoro, who we've had on before, had talked about it, and I almost thought that the series was going to go on to then almost show a slightly, not sinister, but like the negative side of the fact that funding has been so directly targeted purely at medals that it's effective. But it didn't seem, it actually just celebrated all of that and went, didn't we do well? And there was no downside, which, is there another episode coming, or is it just purely whitewash?
I was surprised by it as well. I think now looking back at Marilyn's comment, I think she was probably making the comment to say that it should have been balance. And that's really interesting actually, because after this what's happened with Simone Biles has happened, which has been a big thing. Like people talking about how they're treated. I mean, how does gymnastics come back from this? When you have the most celebrated performer saying that the pressure, it's not just this pressure, it's the fact that having to deal with the abuse scandal, having to deal with the way that they're treated, having to deal with all of those aspects of it. Because I also listened to they were talking about it on the radio, and they kept going on about, the British team, they've got psychologists there, we're really far ahead. We've got psychologists there, we've got, we're
to work through all the issues they've already developed.
Exactly,
at the age of 9.
So, we've got them there. So when they break down, we have someone to sort of like tick the boxes and everything else as well. And it's just really interesting now to see athletes coming out and criticising their own sports. Because we've never seen that before, criticising their, and everything that brings.
Part of me was feeling old mannish though. The type of thing I think of guys would say, that part of me was like that, but that is what sport is. It's like pressure. Yeah, that's exactly what sport is. And like, isn't that performance? And I was a little bit torn in that it's very different now that you've mentioned the fact that to do with the abuse, and yeah, I hadn't even considered that. I hadn't seen that, but there are some sports that fundamentally can't exist with some of the values that that a lot of society now wanting. You just can't have gymnastics at a high level where performers are early teens. That's a conflict, right?
That's the challenge, isn't it? I think it's a bit different because with a lot of the other sports, you're a bit older and you've kind of developed maturity as well. And I think the challenge with someone like Simone Biles is that they've had that abuse scandal. She has been abused as part of that as well. That hasn't really been dealt with. That really, there's still like huge issues with that. It's unclear how well they're supported. I mean, I completely agree with you in the sense that, you've just got to handle pressure, but it's not as if this is her first Olympics. She is the most celebrated, American gymnast of all time. She has handled pressure, but then, this is kind of breaking point. And how does someone who feels that they also have the issue of social media? Because the obvious thing is because that was one thing that we're talking about, and I was thinking, well, because she was like retweeting abuse that she was getting, like she was, you literally could see, she was reading her social media, she would do it, which again, a product of age, you think there might be someone who would be there to sort of protect her against that. If there was some more maturity, in her camp, then I mean, not letting go on social media if it was a bit cruel or something, but it's really, I mean, what do you do in that situation? She has to be on social media because we've talked lots of times about the importance of maintaining your public profile and she needs to do it for sponsors and everything else that goes with it.
I do think, and she's black, and let's be face it, there's huge amounts of racism still globally, but young athletes, I do think you almost need to have a separation of. I've been listening to a podcast recently actually about how people step into personas, and you almost need to have. I think they all need to have private social media accounts and public ones, and the public ones are run in conjunction with either agents or run in conjunction with the sport or parents, and actually because the vast majority of people I've seen that I follow, they don't really reply to anything. They don't really it's handled a lot by the record labels or whoever it may be, and that's the hard thing is gymnasts are young that if they are looking to build on Instagram, they're at an age. I mean, Instagram, I don't think you're meant to have until you're 13. They're just too young for that exposure. But what's also today it's been highlighted that British rowing has received £27 million funding, and they've only received 2 medals, and how there's no value for money in that. But also this morning, like firstly, I was watching the BMXing because it's a wicked sport. Bethany Shriver wins gold, and have you seen her winning it?
No, I haven't. No. I literally just read it before we came on the podcast.
She wins her I can't remember his name now. The young guy from Hackney, from Peckham, who just won silver. He then goes to like celebrate with her. She can't walk because her legs are so gone. He then picks her up, and then for about 10 minutes, she's so gone. Her legs, she can't walk at all. She can't stand. It's incredible. And about the two sports, like there's this whole drive for medals, and I can understand it. It's amazing to see, and you look at your son, and he's going to respond to success, and it does have a big impact. But I think we should also be looking about the impact on society of, is it great for the whole of British society that rowing does well? No, because are there going to be more? Are there going to be council houses? Council fleets. Loads of kids going rowing. No, it's like an elitist sport where it's rewarding people who are probably all in public schools already, it's probably stopping people from being bankers and instead giving the opportunity to win a gold medal. I mean, is that great for society? Whereas if you look at the two medal winners, one's from Loughton, one's from Peckham in the BMXing. If you look at cycling, the mountain biking, all these other sports, yeah, that's great for society. Seeing loads of kids getting into active sports that are accessible, they can do anywhere, and so actually, I think there needs to be.
Are you saying equestrian should get some of that funding in order to even things up?
It's just, I mean, and the trouble is that for Britain, we're always going to be
modern pentathlon. Are you saying that that's the? I think we said to Greg White, "Oh wow, that's a real working class sport."
That's almost the disconnect between what's good for society and what's easy to win medals at. Because as soon as you take an elitist sport, yeah, we're going to do well at it, because you're not going to get loads of Brazilians doing rowing in the same way, because they've probably not, or you're not going to get favelas full of people.
Well, it's funny you say that
trying to be rowers.
It's funny you say that about the rowing, because even Hugo at 5 years old goes, Romania. Are Romania good at rowing? I'm like, well, it's a good point, actually. I don't really know. I didn't think that they were world class in rowing, but it turns out they are. But I think that's a very good point, especially against the fact that like swimming gets a huge amount of funding, and the big legacy of 2012 was supposed to be getting more people into swimming and producing more champions in the pool and things like that. And you're like, do you know what? It's kind of worked. I mean, there's all that issue about swimming pools closing down and things like that. But God, you can see a direct line between 2012 and here and where we are, and that's exactly what you want. And it's the same thing with I mean, even
the same with the BMXing
to some extent. Yeah,
I can't remember her name, but she was the young lady who, I think she was from near where the Olympics happened, and I remember watching her BMXing back in 2012, and she was in the studio. And the commentators were saying, like, what's this like? She's like, this is amazing. None of us managed to get a medal. And these are people who have come up through the system where they received funding specifically because they did well enough in the Olympics to then open the doors to, and you can track these medals and the people in the sport. And so that's why I wonder, if we look at things like mental health, if you look at elitism, all these things. There are some sports like swimming's an amazing sport, but if you remember our interview with Kerry Ann Payne, it's a sport that it requires parents to be driving you at 5 a.m. every morning and after school.
Well, it requires parents to be driving you because there's not enough damn pools. That's the issue, isn't it? That's the issue with the fact that there aren't enough community pools, and there aren't. It's the same thing with there's not enough polo pitches. You obviously need parents to drive you to those because it's the thing. You by limiting access, that is because it may.
But there are some sports as well that take too much of a toll on individuals, and they tend to be endurance sports. If you look at rowing, if you look at swimming, the number of hours that you need to put into it as a youth to be good, like a potential Olympian, I think if we're looking at a balance of what's good for society, at mental health, at stress, actually, there are going to be some sports that in the future we potentially say, is this what we want our children to be doing? And like, would I want my child to be a swimmer? Hell no, because I don't want them spending that much time in a pool. The same way I'd never want to be an Ironman. I'd much rather be a runner, because there's a limit to how much you can run. Whereas if you want to be really good at triathlon, the winner of the triathlon, the Norwegian winner, they showed that he was doing something like 8 hours of training in a day at times.
Yeah,
you just can't do that.
And you need to have a certain wealth level as well in order to be able to do that kind of training. Yeah, you don't work 2 jobs and do 8 hours of Ironman training.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure if you look at Bethany and I'm sorry, I can't remember his name, the gentleman who also won the silver. I'm pretty sure, and they've got funding now, and they're full time. But prior to that, they were probably having relatively balanced lives where they weren't committing everything in their life to doing the sport. And that's going to be, I think, the question we have in the future is, do we want to really pursue sports which require children to dedicate everything for them? And if we don't, are we then just opening up the medals to countries like Russia and China who don't give a shit about their people and will put people through a meat factory where those who survive win?
The thing is with rowing though, isn't it, is that you can get to rowing pretty late. Like rowing isn't a sport where you compete as a child, because it's your size, your height is such a massive factor in success there. Because I remember before 2012 they had, I can't remember, it's called something Giants. It was called a program where they basically went out to find really tall women.
Isn't that how Helen
compete.
Glover was discovered?
I think so. I think there's a lot of them, and there was a lot of people who went into that sport who really weren't into that sport in a massive way before, but it was part of a sort of a concerted effort. But I think rowing's an interesting one, because if going back before like London, rowing was really our only consistent success, wasn't it? Our only consistent success. It was almost, when we went into this, we would think, oh, we'd guarantee it to win at least half the golds in rowing. And it's been, we've won a lot, got medals in it, but comparatively, it's been a disaster. And considering that gets the highest, what's it called, highest or second highest level of funding of all the other activities, and when you compare it with, say, the rugby sevens team, who had all of their funding cut, and they still managed to make it to the to sort of third, fourth place playoff. It's just you wonder, with that. Does that really need funding? Does it, considering that it's such a elite sport, can funding for that come from somewhere else that is more appropriate to those people who are doing it? Go on.
Yeah, and in the future, are we just going to be looking at medals? Or are we also going to be weighing up how good the sport is for society?
Because
actually, impact is what the 2012 Olympic was about. And impact isn't just medals.
Yeah, absolutely. Impact should also be about like doing that thing, getting more people into doing sport, or getting more people doing sport generally. And I think though there is some interesting things to be thinking. So one thing we talked about a lot before, we talked about the gymnastics, or we talked about the fact that they, the way that they treated, I can't remember her name, the way that they treated her, one of the sort of young ladies who wanted to be in it was pretty bad. But they were focused on winning medals, and that has actually paid off in the sense that they have had, they've achieved medal success in areas that they've never achieved medal success in before in gymnastics. And so, that kind of goes to your point that actually that ruthlessness has kind of worked in a sense that, there's a lot of stuff. There's a lot of hype in the, especially like in the BBC studio, about going, so and so's gone away, had children, and and now they're going to come back and can they get Olympic gold? And you're like, that's piling a huge amount of pressure on someone. It makes a really lovely story, and then when they don't get gold, you're like, well, what does that prove? Like, does that prove that she missed out on gold because she had children, or like, why are you adding that element to it?
As soon as you frame the narrative, if you frame the narrative in advance, then and they're trying to frame it as a positive story. But you're right.
Because there was it called, Helen Glover went away and had 2 or 3 children, and then they were going, can she get an Olympic gold? Can she come back? Because there was a very big thing for Jessica Ennis. Jessica Ennis has always said that the silver that she won after coming back from having children was the best medal she's ever won, because it kind of proved that she could kind of do it all. So like, when you frame it, and it's not just Helen Glover, it's anyone else. They go, so and so has done this as well. Can they come back and if they can come back and win a medal, it's going to be a fairy tale. And then they come back and they don't win a medal. Well, what does that mean? Does that mean that's a nightmare? Your narrative has set them up in a way that they maybe weren't thinking. And it's incredible that they've got where they are. It's incredible that someone has children and come back and is 4th in the Olympics. But the fact is, they framed it in a certain way, and it opens itself up to a sort of a weird level of criticism. I do have to say though that my favourite bit so far is Tom Daley winning the gold.
Yeah, incredible.
Oh, just like, well,
Incredible.
yeah, talk about, I just never thought that was going to happen. I thought, oh, there's this whole thing being set up at this, like,
And
well, I
he's
can
got to be
keep
the
thinking it's going
highest
to happen.
profile athlete to not have won a gold
Oh, absolutely.
prior to
Yeah,
that.
I keep think he's the kind of player that everyone thinks he's won a gold because of
Mm.
his high profile nature. And you just think, oh, is he not won a gold? Um, and then when he does it, again, they were again hyping that up to something incredible. When I thought this is never going to pay off, they're talking about that everything he's gone through the different changes to changing the partner, becoming a dad. I'm like, oh yeah, becoming a dad he's not quite the same as a woman becoming a mother in the same with the same kind of toll on the
Oh, a
body.
bit sexist. Bit
You're
sexist.
trying. I mean, you're trying to hype that up in a little, slightly different way. There's no real physical changes in him as a result of adopting a child. But the fact is that that was a proper fairy tale. And the thing is, something like synchronized diving is you tell a 5-year-old that kind of thing exists and has no idea what you're talking about until you show him, in which case they're like, oh, amazing.
Has he been jumping off the sofa?
No, he hasn't. No, I say, oh yeah, this is mainly because one, they're diving from really, really high up, and diving from really,
Yeah.
really high up is kind of really scary. But then the fact that they do it exactly the same. But yeah, it's one of those ones where you don't that sport just doesn't exist for people outside of the Olympics.
I think we should do a little survey of Hugo at the end of the Olympics to be like top 3 sports: best, worst, funnest, hardest, most impressive.
Oh yeah, I think that'd be good. I think you'd do that.
Yeah, just to see a purely unadulterated. He's not had like people influencing or like knowing the backstories. It's purely based on a child's view of what is cool, what isn't.
Well,
Um,
we haven't had the athletics yet, and I think the athletics is the one that makes an impact. Well, it definitely made an impact when we were children. So I think that
yeah,
because it's a much more black and white, winner loser, over very quickly, no round, that kind of stuff. I think when that happens, that's going to be pretty good.
yeah, yeah, yeah.
But
Well, to move us,
wait a minute. There's a couple of other things I have to talk about
yeah.
just to close this off. One, isn't it an absolute joke that Russia are still in the Olympics?
Oh, it's and even calling it the Olympic Committee is so weird because
Oh, it's ridiculous, isn't
that
it?
you it was an endemic issue. So you'd think surely the Olympic Committee were just as heavily involved. It's not as if they're like, oh really? All of our athletes are doping
Oh, guys, we
under
didn't
our
realise. Oh, we
yeah.
didn't know. We'd have nipped it in the bud.
Yeah, it is. And have you still on the Olympics? Have you heard about Chad of Darkness?
Oh,
I don't know. I wrote that down, thinking that would then take me to the link. So there's a South Korean news channel that got in trouble because
oh my God,
when
yes, yeah,
when they
I
were
do.
walking out, just brilliant and also terrible. But when firstly, I saw the opening ceremony, missed the first 15 minutes, and forgot how boring it is just seeing people walk out, and
I,
that is
th-
hour after hour.
I
But
think
there was, and I couldn't.
I turned into an old man. When basically, I mean, I know that, but when people started walking out, when they used to walk out in their teams, and they did it in quite a respectful way, and they did the waving. I mean, there's no one to wave to. But this time when they come out, they're all on their phones, like dicking about and stuff like that. I was
Mm,
thinking, oh dear, oh
I
dear.
could understand that because if there's no crowds there to interact with, then you're just like, well, what are we doing here? This is But the South Korean, one of the radio station channels, the few channels, they were trying to summarize each country in a way, I guess, an informative way for their for the viewer, but they clearly weren't very culturally sensitive or quite lazy. So they had when Chad came out, they called it the dark heart of Africa. Ukraine were represented by Chernobyl
Chernobyl.
and Italy pizza,
But the thing
and
is,
there were
okay,
various.
we went through this, and like some of them were terrible, like like the Chernobyl and the Chad
Hmm,
one, and then they go but the headline was Italy represented by pizza. I was thinking,
which I think is
well,
fine.
I think that's fine. Like,
Yeah,
what's wrong with that? What
yeah.
else does Italy want to be? You know, go on. What would you use for Italy if it wasn't pizza?
Child sodomy. Going back to the Roman times. I mean, very popular. Don't know how they'd represent
I don't know how are we laughing at child sodomy.
that. But I love that. I like the It reminds you that we are all in different. We have different acceptabilities of cultural sensibility, shall we say?
What did they use for Britain?
Ooh.
Was it
Yeah,
like the
I don't
Queen or
know.
something? Was it the Queen?
I've not read that deep into the article. I got to the Heart of Darkness, thought that's the money winner. That's yeah, I don't know. And then, or maybe the Beatles or something, Shakespeare. But have you heard about the Iranian wrestler?
When you say Iranian, I take it that, and a wrestler, I take it that someone's been executed by Iran.
No, quite the reverse, actually. No, they're not the reverse. They've not been brought back to life. That would be.
They've
That
been
would be great.
reanimated. Bloody hell! Iran's nuclear program's taken a weird turn.
So there's someone called I'll pronounce this wrong, I'm sure. Sayed Molay, who he was an Iranian wrestler. Judo fight. He was an Olympian. He was 2018 world champion, so a really, really high level. And he was in the semi-finals of the Tokyo World Championships 2019, and the Iranian authorities ordered him to intentionally lose the semi-final because he was against the Israelis, and they said he should not fight an Israeli fighter. So he said, well, he's defected to Mongolia. So
You don't hear that often, do you? You don't hear many people defecting to Mongolia.
You don't.
There's normally Switzerland or like Denmark or somewhere like that.
Do you think he span a wheel, like he spanned the globe and went, yeah, why not? It looks like a big country. I'm sure it's got lots of resources. And so he actually, does Iran neighbour Mongolia? I don't think it does. It wouldn't be that far off.
No. You say it wouldn't be that far off. We're talking about Asia here.
It's probably miles away.
Even though it's like close on the map, it's going to be miles.
It's probably like Mongolia, Afghanistan, Iran, or similar. Anyway. So he then he moved in 2019 to Europe with a 2-year visa from Germany. In December 2019, he then became a Mongolian citizen, which I think is brilliant to have, because if you're a world champion in judo in a country like Iran, you're going to be a massive name, right? And it shows you. I mean, that is going to have such a big impact on the politics of Iran, to see someone who would be, you'd assume, one of the golden generation leaving directly because of a political statement by the Ayatollah. So incredible. Love that.
But of course they won't see it, will
they? I don't know. I don't know enough about the press in Iran. I do get a sense that there is more. I don't think it's as tied down as some countries.
Yeah.
I don't think they've necessarily got a handle on the internet completely.
Have you, in terms of, the amount of times during these Olympics we've just going back to, like, I don't know why I keep going back to Russia, but I was just thinking, I don't know if you've noticed the amount of times in this Olympics where we've only just missed out on a medal place because of a Russian. I was trying to work out what our medal table might look like in 10 years' time when all the sort of testing comes back and they've re-awarded all the medals. We probably do quite well.
Yeah. And I don't think it will come back, sadly, but it is a complete farce, and I don't see how it's any different to Russia competing.
Oh,
and it allows the Russian government to claim all the medals.
I know. That's it. They'll still use it for the. I mean, that's the whole point, isn't it? There's people were talking about an element of soft power that you have through sporting success, and this completely hands it to this one thing. One, they'll celebrate their sporting success because it's still Russian Olympic Committee. No,
Yeah,
no one in their right mind is separating Russian Olympic Committee with Russia. No one
yeah,
at all. And the second thing is, the Russians think we got away with it again.
yeah.
We
And
got
but
away
then
with it.
if you're the anti-doping, you're between a rock and a hard place. That didn't work, did it? Just
Yeah.
thought of that. ROC. Oh, I'm sorry, do-badders.
That's
I'm
terrible.
sorry.
That's terrible.
I d
The other thing we have to address, and we have
Yeah.
to address this because Facebook pulled us up on this. Didn't pull us up on it. It pulled up Bruno on this actually. It warned said
Oh,
that someone is
I mean, they're already
sharing.
monitoring him because of
They're
his past
monitoring
behaviour, I imagine.
exactly. And Bruno starts speaking. All of a sudden, it comes
Here
off
we
the
go.
algorithm, and people are like, guys, we got to crowd round here to see what Bruno
Yeah.
says. But he made some comment in relation to the fact, the
Mm.
cardboard beds thing, and Facebook said that his comment potentially breached the guidelines and highlighted it and said, there's not going to be any action taken this time, but they basically fact checked it because apparently the story we were talking about the beds being
Mm.
made sex proof is totally false.
So, the only way they know it's false is if they've witnessed two Olympians pounding on a bed, like actually having sex on a bed. That's the only way to disprove that story. So is that what Bruno is sharing?
that's, that's
That's
what
the only way
Facebook
to
was
disprove it, right?
suggesting. That's what the Facebook police they've been doing through the whole of the Olympics. Is just, well, I suppose Facebook are like Google, aren't they? They could probably, they probably got, there's a phone there. Someone's mentioned something
Yeah.
that they're going to go and have sex on a bed. Facebook have somehow got the video working and have been monitoring the offline action.
Is
It's
this a
just, it's how it
clever
works these
way
days.
that someone from the Olympic committee thought, how can I get to watch Olympians, you know, bumping and grinding? I know.
Don't,
Yeah,
don't
get
you
Facebook.
think? Don't you think? They're always worried. Always worried. I was talking to someone the other day about the London winning the Olympics and the fact that
Mm,
London were proper underdogs. Like there was no, when London won the Olympics, it was supposed to go to Paris. Like
mm,
all cameras were focused on Paris at that moment. The thing,
mm.
and London won it, and it was a massive shock. And we are talking about the way that it was pitched and the way that they presented it, and it was like possibly the greatest pitch of all time, the greatest presentation of all time. And one of the things that they focused on was declining audiences. That's a big issue for the Olympics, declining audiences. And I wonder, considering that all this, before the Olympics, there's all this hype and everything about all the Olympians, getting it on and trying to stop them from doing it. Could they combine some element of the Olympics with kind of a Love Island kind of vibe as well? I mean, that would
Oh,
be really interesting, wouldn't it? All
yeah.
of a
So
sudden,
the
you're following in Casa
you're
Olympia.
matching gold
Uh,
with gold. Yeah.
yeah,
Who's gonna
exactly. And they're
who's gonna
going
be
to
making sweet
decouple.
love
I don't
to?
know why. I don't know why I've got the Big Brother voice over that one. I do think though that the guy that does the only reason I watch Love Island is the guy, what's it called, the commentating over the top of it. I think he would be amazing if we had him during the opening ceremony because the problem with that opening ceremony is that you have sports commentators talking it over, and it's so sincere, and it's
We
just
need
so
to
goes,
Eurovision
oh,
it up, don't
this
we?
that's exactly it.
We need to have a funny Irishman taking the piss out of every other country.
Absolutely, that's
What we
exactly
do
what we need
best.
because it's
I
what
say
we
we
do.
do best, the Irish.
Well, Irish do best. The Irish do best. Yeah.
For
But
us.
it's true, isn't it? Like you're watching, they're going, oh, and this thing represents all the love in the world and the hardship that people go. You're just like, this is like, if you need to explain this is rubbish. Like this is boring.
And did the Canadian double denim go down well?
I don't know. Did they wear? I don't think they wore it. Did they? I think they might be using it in the closing ceremony. I don't know. I can't remember seeing it. Yeah.
Oh, I'm not sure. So, some other news from around. I've got so many little things I've put in here to talk about. So, why don't you choose? We've got a new race that I think is potentially one of the best races of all time. We've got,
Is that
in
that
fact, look,
15 grand race?
no, no, I've seen that. Do we want to talk about that? I want to give
I think
publicity to
that
something that
clear
is just
that
ridiculous.
clear PR opportunity to
That that's worked. That it's been
it's
everywhere.
totally worked. Yeah.
Yeah. So I don't think I really want to talk about. But have you heard of the race Lifted?
No, but that is also a Lighthouse Family #1 hit, isn't it? That's one of the worst songs ever made.
Love that song.
Oh, it's so naff.
But so Rebel
Lifted,
Steeplechase has been
at the same
is
time
not
Lifted
happy.
came out. Wasn't Pate Banton in the charts?
They would have crossed over.
I think they would have kind of
What
crossed
a
over.
year!
Like it shows you, doesn't it, that if if Pate Banton was competing against Lighthouse Family and still losing, that's a sad state
Although
of
I think
affairs.
Pato was maybe a little bit earlier. But
Yeah,
so
maybe.
this is the new format where instead of Rebel Steeplechase isn't happening. I don't know whether that's because of COVID or they just can't be asked for anymore. So I got an email out of the blue. I don't know if it's from the same people, maybe it's the same marketing agency. There's a race in Germany, up and down a ski jump.
Yeah.
Now, what I love about this is how do you think? Like, how would you spice that up?
Add people in Zorbs coming down while people are going up.
Thrown a camel toe.
Throwing
So
a camel toe. Oh, okay.
one person starts at the top, one person starts at the bottom. Those two people are attached the entire distance by a pulley and some carabiners, so that the person running down helps pull the person running up. You get counted down and then you sprint as fast as you can.
Oh my
So
God.
imagine how the trouble with running down as fast as you can is you wouldn't be able to do it. You'd fall
Yeah.
over. Whereas with the counterbalance, the trouble with running up, it's too hard. Whereas with the counterbalance, it's the perfect race.
Oh no, but that's the problem, isn't it? Like that when if you're running up and you're being assisted, like your lungs are gonna that your lungs
Imagine
in many ways running up. The difficulty of running up is that your lungs can cope with it because
yeah,
your legs can't handle it. You can't run too fast for your lungs. Whereas
yeah.
if you are given assistance, you're
And
not gonna be held back in that way. Your lungs are they're gonna explode.
but also you imagine putting someone like Mene on the down with who's the smallest person we know? Yeah.
McDowell.
Say
McDowell
again?
on the up. Richard
Yeah,
McDowell on the up.
down on the up, Mene on the down. And
It would just be
um,
boom.
yeah, the 340. And the trouble with this will be, I really want to.
And then
I
do they
don't think I
swap?
could.
And then do they swap round? And then that's when it all falls apart.
They've not explained that, and they should do. Well, actually, no. I like the idea of it just being heavily weighted in one direction. Unfortunately, I can't make it because it's the 28th of August, Runfest Run, same weekend. But people aren't going to have the chance to practice this. I can't imagine. And so, what then happens when you have Mene going full throttle down, uncontrollable, and someone trips, which will happen at some point, and they then get dragged up this AstroTurf? Can you imagine the carpet burns of being dragged 200 meters up?
I want to see.
So,
I want to see I want to see a do-badder team where the person at the bottom is sat on a tray with a beer, and but unbeknownst to the person at the top,
with 2 pints.
exactly,
Yeah.
running, yeah, exactly 2 pints, and they get to the halfway mark, and the person running down suddenly realizes why it's so damn hard.
But do badders, can anyone make this? I can't, sadly. It's in the website is lifted LIFFTED.com. It's in Germany. I think.
It's in Germany, I think. Wow, with that kind of detail, we're definitely going to get people to.
I'm quickly translating the website
It might be in German.
it doesn't actually say the location with a little help from my friends. So, but go on lift if you live in Germany or Austria
Germany,
or
Austria, generally
France.
Central Europe.
Yeah, it doesn't say. It doesn't say where it is on the website. That is a bit of maybe it's known as a is Bischofshofen. Let's have a look. Bischofshofen. It's a town in Austria. So, who is in Austria? Do badders. We need someone to go to this, even if they're not going to take part. We want to see it filmed because there are going to be some absolute shockers, and there's also going to be some hugely missed pairings, you'd imagine. But it just sounds like such a good race. Maybe one would do next year in the calendar. So we got that, and then we've also got. Did you see the post Andy Palmer put in the Facebook group?
No.
So he mentioned, meanwhile, in another group, and someone had posted in an American trail running group, does anyone run with a handgun? I'm looking for a holster that's comfortable and lightweight. I've tried a hip holster, which is obnoxious and slips around and moves by the end of a trail run, and a leg holster, which is heavy, obnoxious, and causes a blister. Wow! Going out with a handgun.
We talked about this briefly, didn't we? With in relation to the bear chasing incident, and say, is it normal for Americans to go out, or anyone who has the kind of trails where you have animals like that with a gun? And it's not normal according to what they were saying. But yeah, I'd love the new
Do you think that could be a new duathlon
I'm trying to think of a bag manufacturer that isn't 10 years old who might be. Well, I can't remember any. Name a bag manufacturer. I can't think of a single bag manufacturer.
North Face.
North Face. Yeah, you can imagine.
Innovate. Salomon.
You could totally imagine a North Face bag that has a holster in it, couldn't you? If anything, if anyone's going to do it,
there's going to be a redneck. Although actually, redneck is actually a complimentary phrase. I haven't read the history, but I'm sure there will be an American manufacturer who does that, without a doubt.
Redneck's a complimentary phrase.
Yeah, well, I looked at the history of it, and actually, it's complimentary from my political stance. It might not be necessarily, and it's not obviously meant as a complimentary phrase, but yeah, if you look at the history of it, it goes back to a factory, I believe, where they created a union that wore the rednecks to try and stand up for workers' rights, and I think that was a good thing for society.
Oh my God, that's not in America. In America, that's the worst. That's unionizing.
That's socialism. That's communism. Communism.
Communism.
Helping poor people. Why would we do that? Why would you help poor people when you can just give the money to rich people and let trickle down economics take care of it? That's the way to do it. Anyway, and did you listen to the Off Menu episode with Dan Aykroyd?
Oh, I've not listened to it yet. No, I haven't had a chance to listen to it.
Okay. Well, that's something to look forward to. I think that's been quite a nice episode.
That's been quite a nice episode. I mean, it's going to be wildly out of date by the time you listen to this, but
it will be. But hopefully enough in there for you to enjoy. If there's any guests you'd like us to interview in the future, do let us know. Instagrammers, messages. We've had quite a few good suggestions recently, actually. I am chasing up on there. I know there's a couple of people who are trying to do every single Olympic event to raise money for charity, which I think is a brilliant idea.
Oh, really?
Yes. I assume that's going to take them almost a decade, given how many sports there are. But we will be looking to talk to them at some point. So thank you. Say again?
You're going to get on a horse and do equestrian?
Well, they're going to have to do windsurfing. They have to do like the shooting ones. They're going to have to do judo, weightlifting. It'd be great as winter, like ski jumping. What's the most extreme? But I mean, there's so many sports out there, and the difficulty will be a lot of the team sports, and so they'll have to find a team to do these things.
And a team to play.
It might actually be. Softball, yeah. Teams, yeah. There'll be some sports that you just can't really find in the UK. And will those teams necessarily want to play with two people completely useless at the sport just to help out their charity. It's going to be it'd be interesting to see how they've met those challenges and whether they do complete it. But please do leave us a review. In fact, I did have some feedback that I've forgotten about, but here's a review we've recently got. It says, Ior and Tigger talking about running. If and when of them...
Ior? Ior? In the Eeyore?
Eeyore. Well, I don't have kids. I can't remember what it is. I can't remember.
Have kids? I don't have kids. One of the most famous children's books of all time.
I don't think I really read it as a kid. In fact, this is such a long review. We're just going to say thank you, Gilson. It's so long that I'm not going to read the whole thing out, and I haven't read out to find out the funny bit to then read out. But she often turns off to discuss it. So please do leave us a funny review, and it really helps the podcast. And if you haven't reviewed yet, why not? Get on iTunes, leave us a 5-star review. Do suggest us topics. Get in the Facebook group. We've got some merch, don't we, Jody?
We have got some merch. And actually, in the next episode, we need to talk about fake merch. We need to talk seriously about fake merch and the dangers of fake merch. And
people are getting
the quality of the fake merch coming through as well, because we think the quality has dipped very, very low. So we need to talk about that. But there is merch now in the merch store that you can purchase. Maybe some of the lettering's fallen off. You never know. Did you see some of the Bad Boy Running Club vests where missing letters have?
Oh God. Okay.
It's only happened in a couple of times, but it's funny. It's like the I has fallen off, and people are then saying there's no I in the Bad Boy Running Club. It's also making a point. Yep. So if you want to buy that, go to store.badboyrunning.com. If you want to join the Facebook group, head over to Facebook, type in Bad Boy Running Podcast, answer 3 questions, and make sure you join the discussion. If you're watching on YouTube, please add a comment as to what should we get people to comment on YouTube.
What sports should be in the Olympics, for one?
What sports shouldn't be in the Olympics as well? What have you watched so far? What sports shouldn't
be in the Olympics?
What sport have you watched so far? You're like, this absolutely should not be in the Olympics. I think there's quite a few contenders. I mean, I don't even know what softball is,
really,
or why baseball is even allowed.
Although America lost to Japan, which is quite funny. Did they lose? No, they. Yeah.
Irrelevant. If we say it does, then most people's experience will be that
no one's going to check up on it.
No one's going to check that. No one ever fact checks our stuff.
We certainly.
So also subscribe to us on YouTube. Click a button around here somewhere, probably up there. I don't know which way it kind of looks but yeah, thanks very much.
And we'll see you next time, guys.